For this section, we're going to go deeper into the specifics of how we want to take what we just learned about that why level of the standards, align them to essential questions strategically. So not just in my units. This isn't a, hey, how about my units piece? And we don't want to go from the content and skills to the essential questions. And I'll talk about that more. But we're going to look at the assessment design implications for us and how to move forward, creating the rubrics for these pieces, the assessments for these pieces, and the essential questions for these pieces. All of that is on the table in this session. All right, so let's take a look at this. Back to the idea of the essential question structure that we just talked about. When we think about getting answers to those essential questions, you have a lot of options. It can be a reflection. It can be an essential question journal. It's a very good place to start, having students answer the essential questions, read other people's answers to the essential questions, and go back and revise their own. That is a natural part of these kinds of assessments. Ultimately, though, we are getting them to craft a specific answer to it. There are two kinds of essential questions that we'll be playing with. The first kind is what you and I are going to call overarching. An overarching essential question connects middle school to high school, kindergarten, all the way up to 12th grade. So let's say you and I make 10, 20 essential questions that we then spread out strategically and repeat often in that K through 12 sequence. I can repeat between units within a year. I can repeat within years. That's a portfolio structure. That's something we could take away from this and go, hey, how are we developing a student's lens? How are we developing their thinking around this idea? So let's call that product number one. And it would be a chart, and seriously, K through 12. The second kind of essential question that we're going to be playing with here is one that we develop that aligns to our theme, an issue, a case study, a topic, or a challenge that is very unique to our unit, something that we're developing, but it's an essential question that didn't necessarily come from the standards, okay? Those we're going to handle with the overarching. But there might be an essential question that develops from the materials that we've selected. Maybe the identity of who we are as a school. Maybe it aligns to Hong Kong specifically, or even you as a teacher. Those we're going to call unit-based essential questions. And they go into the 2 to 5 that I'm talking about. So two of my essential questions might come from my standards. Two of my essential questions might come from this, what we call a content genre, a theme, topic, case study, issue, or challenge we're giving to the kids. And then that last essential question, we leave for the kids. We want them to co-create it with us. And that's really something we're going to be developing over time. So that's the structure, how it's going to look for social studies and my religion class. I'm going to pause here. Any questions on that? How are you feeling about what I just said? That's a little bit more detail on types of essential questions. All right, let's go. So a quality essential question has more than one answer, might connect to the student, connects past to the present. Those are for those overarching ones I'm talking about and for those unit ones I'm talking about. Okay. And that brings us to the 7 CLIs. Please join me here. I'm going to try and make this a little larger. So again, these don't change K through 12. Every essential question we create is going to align to these when I say they align to the standards, the 2, out of the 2 to 5. All right. Let's take a quick read of these. Can we take a minute and just read them since all of us have to align to these? Can I get a thumbs up? Like just read them maybe in pairs. Read these. Maybe grab an essential question that you currently have and try to align to it. I want you to test whether you see the alignment to your content area and to the materials you're working with. Okay, so you got a chance to read them. Couple of things to remember about these. These are not actually standards, meaning they're not your grade level standards. They're not mandated or required in any way, shape, or form that way. What you and I are using them for is to align our why level, the essential question structure. They're very powerful for that, and they're based on the brain science that we were talking about. So it's not a blind, we're going to just check off our list and we're going to be in compliance with some sort of alignment to standards. It's a thinking tool. It's something to really help us approach how do we take essential questions and strategically align them in an overarching design K-12. So hope I made that clear. And the idea of literacy, yes, it's literacy in the classical reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and dialogue, technically. Thank you, Singapore. But the idea becomes it's also more about really being able to shift gears in my brain and look at the world. So when you and I think about mathematical literacy or scientific literacy or spiritual literacy or musical literacy, we're going to be using that term literacy, which is a why all of our content areas align to this. Notice it's not, I'm going to teach you how to read, or I'm going to teach you vocabulary, or I'm going to teach you how to write. It's really more about the thinking, communicating, and reflecting. This is a chart that is waiting for you in the shared folder. And the way this chart works is you have your essential questions on the left, supporting questions that you're thinking about, maybe questions that came from your materials. Very often, the questions that come within textbooks or within materials or provided structures tend to be supporting questions. And then what grade levels you feel these would be appropriate for, and then what capacities of a literate individual you feel it could align to. For the record, they can align to more than one. A really powerful use of an essential question is to answer it from different capacities of a CLI perspective, meaning answer it from the perspective of evidence, now answer it from the perspective of independence. That can change and develop the answer to be more sophisticated over time. One example I filled out here, the essential question I went with, if you see it, I tried to make it a larger font. Why is the rise of technology important to me and my own future? Those social studies standards go deep into that relationship of what technology and the rise of technology does and how that impacts economy, all kinds of elements. What we're asking the student to do is take that information you're teaching them and process it and synthesize it with their own understanding. A supporting question the child would have to learn how to answer first: what social, political, and economic opportunities and problems arise from changes in technology? They could answer that from a case study about the cotton gin, or a case study about the steam engine, or a case study about the wheel or the printing press. The idea here is a normal kind of summative assessment or an assignment I might make would have them wrestle with that supporting question. I might teach lots of lessons just to get them to be able to answer that question, which then in turn prepares them to answer the essential question, which is having them apply it to themselves in their own future. And I could get lots of different kinds of answers from the kids that way. If I'm teaching them a case study of the cotton gin, then, or maybe I'll use the railroads, okay? If I'm teaching them a case study of the railroads, then every student is really going to give me very similar answers to that supporting question. And that's how I can see the difference between aligning to the content level all the way up to the why level, or the what level and the why level. Now, why is the rise of technology important to me and my future might be appropriate in grades 3, 5, 8, 9, and 12. That's what I'm suggesting here, which means I then get the chance to teach about lots of different rises of technology, whether that's from the ballpoint pen, maybe it's then to the democratic method that we're using representational government. Maybe then it might go into something where we're looking at the internet. Maybe my students are doing a case study on that and how that changed the flow of information against the shot heard around the world, right? Or then ninth grade, again, it might be something like the Gutenberg Bible or the printing press, things like that. The CLIs I picked were 2, because it's the building strong content knowledge, 3, addressing different audiences and tasks and purposes, 6, was that valuing evidence? I think so. And 7, different perspectives and cultures. This is what I would love for us to spend time building together right now. And I don't want you to stay isolated in your own grade level. In fact, I would love for you to look at the resources I've provided and even start maybe at some elementary, middle school, high school, try and branch out, maybe team up with one another, not just going through your own courses, and pulling out some of these essential questions to build this chart. This is a slide I want you to use to coach yourself through your own essential questions. Also, while I'm looking at your materials, these are the coaching questions I'm going to use to give feedback. Is there a clear concept driving the question? Is it written for the student? So I'm looking for it to be approachable and accessible to the student. Can it organize and frame an entire set of classroom experiences? That one's important, to be clear. I have a book here written by Mark Twain called The Gilded Age. The first thing you see when you open a book is going to be the table of contents. The table of contents are the essential questions, and all of the pages are your lesson plans. So each lesson plan has a place directly organized by these essential questions. I just wrote a book, don't even have a copy of it here, but there was no section where I was allowed to say all the stuff I wanted to say to teachers but didn't fit into a chapter goes here. So if there's a lesson plan that doesn't align to one of these essential questions, we have to challenge ourselves. Why are we putting it there? How are we fitting it there? This is very important because just like that neurological pathway I was talking about, the neurons that fire together permanently wire together. If I'm doing too many lessons that don't align to that pathway, I start creating too much of a breakage, and the children will retain the material, but they won't be able to make connections as easily. So this is about curriculum design and assessment design. If I have lessons that don't fit into an essential question, I might challenge why I'm doing the lessons, or I have to challenge my essential questions. Maybe I just need better essential questions. So this is our goal, is to really make a structure that fits with every piece of everything we're doing for these kids so that they retain it better? Is it essential for the students given their experiences K-12? If it's too much of a spot check, maybe it's a unit-based question, right? Maybe one that attaches to a theme, issue, topic, challenge, or case study. Does it actually align with the standards? I am looking for you to align these to the CLIs. Is there more than one question and they're all kind of the same? One thing you and I are going to do by the end of this experience is we're going to answer our own essential questions. That is a great way to test whether it's a reasonable essential question. Answer it ourselves. What kind of answer do you expect to get from your students? That's going to show you, A, if it's redundant. Is it using the exact same material? 2, is it doable? Is it connecting to the content and skills, the learning targets that we're teaching? Or are we not quite there yet? In which case, we should refine it. And last but not least, does it link and bind content and skills and assessments in our ultimate design? I'm not going to get to that in this workshop, so I'm really more focused on these top 3, but this is how we're going to use it going forward. Let's dive in. I want us to go into our breakout rooms. And again, I'll stay here to answer questions, but in the breakout rooms, this is the example I have for social studies. So social studies, I see you're already on here. And then religion, I started to kind of build one for you. I was using some of our resources that we had. Please feel free to change these, do what you want with it. But here's what I don't want you to miss. See the PDFs I added? So here's one on just using the essential questions. If you don't feel like you've been trained on essential questions, I'm assuming you have some history with this, then feel free to use this document. I also have different sample religion essential questions and sample social studies essential questions that are not on your document. Look at this. It has tons: civics, economics, geography, culture, time, places, power. I did not put all of these on your document. So I would encourage you to take some of these, if someone could print one out maybe, and then use this to guide your conversation. So we have social studies in one part and Bible in the other, and they're working through the resources I gave them, and they're filling in the chart, kind of having those essential questions aligned to the CLIs and what grade levels they think it's appropriate and what supporting questions they already have in their resources and materials that align. Okay, let's dive in. Let's do this. Team, I'm going to ask you to reflect a little bit, finish up the pieces you're working on, and I want to pull us together to kind of set up some ideas for how to take this work forward. So if you could finish that thought, leave a little bit of a reflection of where you are in the work so you can pick it up again at another point. And can we pull together maybe in 1 minute? Is that all right? So if I share my screen, this is an example of where social studies was taking this work. So this is what I'm seeing. I see a sample essential question. Why do I need a government? And then I saw you putting in some sample supporting questions that align to maybe units you have or materials you have that work there. This is the thinking I have in my brain as I'm reading this. What is the difference between various governmental systems? What is the role of government and why was it created? This is perfect. Those are exactly what I would expect supporting questions to be in alignment to the essential question, why do I need a government? Where it says all, I did put in the comment. When I see all, I'm assuming that you're thinking it could be all of them, which is true, right? Because why do I need a government? For a kindergartner would be, why do we need rules? Some kids coming into a kindergarten class, if they haven't been there, why do I have to listen to the teacher? Why do I have to do these things? Going all the way up to students really reflecting on that balance between individual freedom and living in a society. So I know it says all right now, but your goal going forward is to maybe strategically pick some grade levels to let this be a focus, because we don't want to try to do all of the essential questions everywhere. Okay, that starts to get overwhelming. So if I have 2 to 5 per unit, and I have 3 to 5 social studies units at the elementary level, and 5 to 8 at the middle school level, and 5 to 8 at the high school level, if you do the math, that gives you anywhere between 10 to 16 essential questions per year coming from this list. So it can't be all of them. And you and I, as a department, want to have a good structure. Like how often, maybe we spiral to them every couple of years. Maybe there's a couple of years we do them all in a row. So that's the expectation. I also saw you starting to put the CLIs in. That's perfect. Your goal, so the expectation going forward will be that every CLI is addressed in an essential question at least once every single year. So there's only 7 CLIs. So that means I do CLI 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 every single year, thereby really strengthening that brain development at each grade level. Now, obviously, there's going to be room to have certain ones get repeated and certain ones maybe, again, this is not a mandatory, it is a thinking tool for you to use as a guide. But hopefully that helps you as you develop this structure. I know we can't finish it today, but how are you feeling about the design? The design that you're creating is an overarching design for even what we would expect as assessments from each grade level, what they should be focusing on. You don't want to put too much effort into rubrics or very specific nitty-gritty work down at the granular level if we haven't determined first this overarching vertical, that K-12 experience for the students. Ultimately, this work will save you time, because you and I could take every project we do and create a rubric for it. But if that project or that work doesn't fit into a structure that's meaningful for these kids, that's time you're never going to get back. So this is an investment in making sure that all the work you're going to be doing on those rubrics is anchoring into a structure that's meaningful for you. So in that thought, I'm here now, Q&A, talk to me. How do you feel about your start? How do you feel about the next steps if I'd laid them out? And do you need clarification on anything?
Hello. I find this to be a really hard collaborative process. How would we best move forward and actually make decisions?
So the pattern is you get a lot, and then a smaller group, we refine it and structure it strategically, share that with the larger group and get a response. But you don't lose the lot, right? So right now we get everybody's voice in, but you're right, to sit here and really structure something, you get some key people who are interested in this work, who feel comfortable thinking about it like that, and they would propose a structure that then again everyone gets to respond to. That's where we get a lot again, and then it gets refined again. You try and do that iterative process 3 times. Once you've gone through that 3 times, you probably have a structure that's really solid for the kids.
Awesome.
Excellent question.
Marie, I think one of the things that I know you and I have spoken about before is that, you know, that you have to have good assessment design, that it has a focus on standards to actually build standards-based rubrics. You can't actually let it wag the other way, right?
That's right.
Is that, I mean, I guess, you know, when you do this sort of work that we've been doing today, if you can just comment on how important or effective that is, how essential that is, excuse the pun, to you know, to do first before you actually get to the rubric part, not the other way around.
For sure. So the first time I worked on writing essential questions, we had a large group. We looked at all our content and skills. We looked at our textbooks. We looked at our topics, and we looked at our assignments, and we said, what essential question could I use for these? You will then have entered what I affectionately call essential question hell. And the reason is because you can write hundreds of possible essential questions for any of them. That will be hours of your life you will never get back. And then you'll write rubrics for every single set of those, absolutely aligning the numbers to the this, to the that. And what was the meaning behind it? Where was it going? Again, years of my career, I am saving you. I will beg you. You will be wordsmithing till the cows come home, going nowhere. And then someone in a couple of years will come in and go, we have to redo all of these. And then you will throw little sharp things at them. So what I'm saying is take the time, get a solid why, take that why, build a structure of these essential questions that make sense, then design assessments that develop, get evidence of that why. Then you will say, what content and skills do I need to teach to get the kids to be able to do that? And then you will design rubrics that will utterly do that. And you can wordsmith it to death, knowing it fits into a cohesive whole. That's it. Thank you, everyone.